everyone, to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series, and a Happy New Year to you all. Our first event to bring in 2017. The series is back, a whole new series. We have a new Penny Stamps calendar that's hot off the press, that's out in the lobby. I saw some of you get it on the way in. Do make sure to get it on the way out. There's a lot of stuff to look at in there, and they're very nice. So get one and take it to a friend. Plan on joining us for many Thursdays to come, and we will surely transform winter to spring. The season begins with a myriad of diverse creative folks from around the globe. So to start it off, we thought we'd start it today right here at home as we present one of the Stamp School's own, painter, moving image, and installation artist, Robert Platt. Yeah. And I want to thank our series partners for their support, Arts Engine and Michigan Radio 91.7 FM. I have just a few community announcements in brief before we get started. This Sunday, January the 15th, is, in fact, Martin Luther King's birthday, which is celebrated on Monday, next Monday the 16th. And as part of that, it will be the 31st Annual University of Michigan MLK Symposium Keynote Memorial Lecture, which will take place at Hill Auditorium. This conversation will be between Amy Goodman, a past Penny Stamp speaker, I might add, an award-winning investigative journalist and host of Democracy Now!, and Golden Globe nominee Issa Rae, writer, producer, and star, very popular, of the hit HBO series Insecure. This event is free and open to the public. It will be held, that is Monday, at Hill Auditorium, begins at 10 a.m., doors open at 9:30. Also on Monday, in the MLK spirit, the Stamp School student organization Stamps in Color presents an exhibition, Redefining Identity. This is at the Duderstadt Gallery on North Campus. It's featuring work of students from across the U of M community. Redefining Identity seeks to reject, reveal, and debunk society's definitions of identity and replace them with a vision of one's own. They will have an exhibition reception on Monday at 7 p.m. in the Duderstadt Gallery, so do join them. These are just a few highlights of really a month-long MLK symposium that honors Dr. Martin Luther King that goes on across campus with lots of different events, speakers, artists, etc. There's a complete listing of events at mlksymposium.umich.edu, so you should definitely check it out. And then very importantly, next week, Tuesday, we have a very special Penny Stamp special event. Considered one of the most significant and influential creative forces in the performing arts of the past 50 years, a pioneer of what is now called extended vocal technique and an interdisciplinary performance icon. We are thrilled to be able to bring you Meredith Monk. Yeah. So this will be on Tuesday, next Tuesday, right here, same place, same time, 5:10 p.m., but on Tuesday. And then we will commence with regular Thursday programming with Joe Sacco next Thursday. But don't miss it. It's really quite something to have Meredith come and speak about her work. I'm sure many of you have seen her perform, and she will be performing the following Friday, but to get to see her speak about it, I think is very special. Please do remember to turn off your cell phones. We are going to have a regular Q&A today in the screening room, so please do join us there right after the talk here to meet Robert and ask him questions. Exit the theater, go to the left down the hall, and you'll find another little theater there, the screening room. And now for a proper introduction of today's speaker, please welcome Stamp School professor Andy Pascavage.
An old CFC project, for those of you who remember. Good evening. I wanted to do something special for Robert Platt tonight. I didn't want to read his resume as a way of introducing him. He's an accomplished artist, well respected in the art community. Half of resume is written in Japanese anyway, I don't read Japanese. The other half, according to Robert's instructions, had to be read with a distinct Cockney accent. I couldn't do that either. So I asked Pat Hodges for an advice what to do tonight. For those of you who do not know Pat, she's the only person at Stamps who knows everything. Pat said, why don't you do something fun? For example, sing duets with John Marshall. Robert would love that. And John loves singing Coldplay karaoke in his spare time. All right, I'll do that. Sing Robert's favorite Coldplay song with John. John's accent will be suiting to Robert tonight. He might be even imagining Chris Martin in the image of John, making both feel closer to their drifting homeland, Brexitlandia. Maybe we could all start singing, we're gonna get it together. I know we're gonna get it together somehow. So I went to John all excited about this, about Coldplay duets. John said, mate, I'd love to do that. Coldplay rocks, and Robert is super cool. But mate, it's all about MDes now. I get it, John, okay, right. But MDes now just doesn't cut it. It's not like we're gonna get it together tonight. So as you can see, I built this crazy papier-mâché mask based on an early design for a CFC class I did, thinking that this would make Robert happy. It didn't. He's back there thinking, I must be crazy, a fool for doing this on his big night tonight. I am a fool. But there's one thing I know and I deeply care, and that is Robert is a damn good painter. One of the finest, most brilliant out there, really. They say painting is dead. It isn't. It ain't dead. Painting is alive because of artists like Robert. He makes it lush and real. And he makes you alive, and all of you at Stamps. And then you make all things around you alive, not only here, but wherever you go. So take classes with him. Pick his brain. Ask him to do painting demos for you. Let him get lost in this act of making. Trick him, fool him. Get one of those small demos he paints. And if that is not fair, take his brushes, palette, even paper towels he uses to wash his hands. They're reliquaries with supernatural powers. Really. I am super excited tonight. And it is my distinct privilege and a great honor to introduce an artist who has indeed charted new territories of representation and who has essentially created a unique and an original language of visual symbols, the one and only Robert Platt. He will come before us tonight in the same grandeur that Brad Pitt walked into Thelma and Louise and stole Gina Davis' heart. He's gonna do the same for us tonight. Please let me welcome Robert tonight. Good luck.
Wow, that was pretty amazing. Thank you, Andy. And thank you all for coming tonight. So, that's a hard one to follow. Okay, so I want to start this presentation today with a question. How do we know landscape? For most of us, the primary way of knowing the material world is through vision, the straightforward act of opening the eyes and looking at an object, a scene, a horizon, Unless you're the unfortunate subject of the Russian psychologist Alfred Yarbus, who studied the tracking motion of the eye using elaborate contraptions to monitor the fixed position, the process of vision, for most of us, is an embodied experience. It's altered by the infinite range of possibilities presented by the body moving in space. The eyes with the body can move quickly or slowly. The hand and the head still are moving side to side, up or down. The eyes view a scene and a cognitive process that begins with the particles of light assembled by the brain create an image. But the simple act of looking is actually a more involved process. It results from a complicated synthesis of physical, psychological, and cultural conditions. Landscape theorist Dennis Cosgrove discusses that landscape is similarly produced by physical and cultural conditions, and that it exists on such a large scale that it can't be discerned or known through a simple, quick glance. Instead, landscape is perceived by an accumulation of observations in which not only optics, but also memory come into play. These two complex phenomena, landscape and vision, are deeply intertwined, and it's an ongoing story that informs my creative research. As Cosgrove has noted, landscape is a way of seeing. This landscape way of seeing is neither universal or neutral in its motivations and operations. As an artist, my interest in environment and behavior over the past 15 to 20 years has only gotten more complex and more intriguing to me, more so as technology becomes so ingrained in our thought process and actions. I'd like here to pause for a moment to explain a little bit about the elusive title of this talk, prosfuge. Prosfuge is a blend word referencing the notion of prospect refuge theory, a concept developed by J. Appleton, an English geographer and academic, in 1975. In his book, The Experience of Landscape, he proposes that humans seek out to safety in innate desire when reviewing a space, to have opportunity or prospect whilst being safe, the refuge. According to Appleton, this stems from the evolutionary survival, where the predator must be able to see their prey without being seen. Prospect refuge theory suggests that spaces we find most acceptable to be in present us with great opportunity, while simultaneously fulfilling the desire to retreat into a protected realm. His ideas are particularly influential in the field of art history, aesthetics, and landscape architectural studies. For me, this term raises an engaging array of conceptual processes that I've begun to find expression in my art practice and research. This presentation, over the next 45 minutes or so, will outline several bodies of recent work done during the past 5 years since my arrival here at Stamps, coming from an Anglo-Japanese background. Revisiting the notion of prospect refuge theory can reveal alternative ways to see and experience landscape in a culture of increasing virtuality and mediation. Embracing and navigating the oscillatory relationship between the hidden and the revealed, actual and virtual, here and there, mental and physical geography, my creative practice adopts diverse approaches to art making that explore composite representations that can encourage multiple understandings of our interface with the spaces we inhabit. But before I go into the work in detail, I'm going to briefly set out the conceptual framework that informs my work, that starts with a quick experiment. And no, it doesn't involve any eye-fixing straps or apparatus. I'd like you to simply sit back and relax and look at this picture. Okay. Well, apparently it takes 47 seconds to eat and peel an orange. According to historian and cultural critic Sir Kenneth Clark, few people can look at a painting longer than it takes to peel and eat an orange. This is a small little painting done by an unknown artist, sometime probably from the Rajasthan in between 350 years ago. It's part of a Hindu tradition of tantric paintings that are made and used by the practitioner for their spiritual, ascetic practice. Did any of you get a state of higher consciousness? Looking for a long time at pictures is not the usual way people see artworks. The usual interaction with artwork is a glance or a glimpse or a cursory look. There have been few surveys of how visitors interact with paintings in museums. One finding states that the average viewer goes up to a painting, looks at it for less than 2 seconds, reads the wall text for another 10 seconds, glances at the painting to verify something in the text, and moves on. Another survey concluded a median time of 17 seconds. The Louvre found that people look at the Mona Lisa for an average of 15 seconds. All this says is that people are getting pretty good at peeling oranges and eating them. Apparently, our encounters with art are usually brief or non-encounters, but as we know from experience, sometimes the briefest of glances can stay with us for a lifetime. It's not just a question of time, but the quality of that attention. Critic art James Elkins discusses in a related blog that the dwindling attention spans have increased exponentially over the past decade, and yes, technology gets the blame. The rise of social networks and the smartphone have made us fatally incapable of concentration, and nowadays we're more interested in telling people what we're doing than doing it.
No, it's rubbish! Yeah, total rubbish! Yeah, ciao! Hello! No! I'm on a boat in Holland! In Holland! No, it's rubbish! There's lots of cheese and stuff! Yeah, I can't talk! Yes! Yeah, okay, see you! Ciao! Hello? What? No, I'm in a restaurant! No, I'm in a restaurant, hang on! What? Hang on, I can't hear you, I'm gonna go outside! Yeah, hang on! Yeah, ciao! Yeah, I'm jogging! Yeah, I'm jogging! Yeah, fantastic! Yeah, new lease of life and all that!
Brilliant. Funny to think that that was almost 20 years ago. So that's a playful characterization of these people we sometimes encounter who go around in galleries in a state of anesthetized indifference to the objects on display, and also the dissolving notions of domestic and public space. Recently, I took a trip to Niagara Falls, and after being there for some time, I noticed something odd. There was only one little guy who seemed to be even remotely interested in actually looking at the sublime natural phenomenon in front of him. His attention was finally interrupted by the curiosity of this big, lumpy viewing device placed at strategic intervals. With a quarter inserted that will last less than the time it takes to quickly peel an orange, we can scan the tempting prospect. The viewing station was overrun with people, not truly observing their surroundings, but intent on recording that image for instant upload to social media. The distribution of the image, the proof of travel, is now immediately available and almost a necessity. So what's the reason for the almost unanimous sense of disappointment or feeling distinctly underwhelmed at the falls? Go back a couple of centuries before the digital camera, we read tourist guides. The pioneering handbooks and guides to the lakes were the traveling Englishman's Bible. These and other 19th century guides contained prodigious amounts of detail, and the tone was of one gentleman advising the other on attractions, hotels, and local customs. The judgment made in the guides was seen as definitive, just as it is today with digital camera images. The camera, we say, does not lie. That might be true, but what is salient is that it conditions us to see in a prescribed way. The devotion of the 19th century tourist to his guidebook provoked the complaint that he or she literally lost sight of what he or she was meant to be experiencing. Faces glued to a gilpin guide, they read about the quality of light at a certain time and traipsed to specific points to view the lakes, scarcely lifting their eyes to see the real thing. Similarly, today's tourist gaze, as mediated through a lens, evokes the same sentiments of estrangement from the ultimate reality. Here's a depiction at about the same time of Gilpin's guides of Thomas Gainsborough holding what is called a clawed glass. These came in different shapes, tints, but essentially they were a black convex mirror that an artist or traveler would have in their pockets. Confronted with an open and overwhelming landscape prospect, the viewer, by turning his back to the scene, would carefully assimilate an approximation of Claude Lorrain's classic landscape paintings. Beyond the sense of aesthetic pleasure and the sense of control, this device made a potentially chaotic scene more manageable, as one would sit down, make a quick sketch to add to their travelogue portfolios. Similarly, today's tourist gaze, as mediated through a lens, evokes the same sentiments of estrangement from ultimate reality. To do so in this is a profound sense of alienation, but in truth, it's part and parcel of the world becoming, in Marshall McLuhan's words, a global village. His often quoted saying that the medium is the message refers to how the form of a medium, guidebook, a lens, digital camera, conditions content so that the medium ultimately influences the nature of the message being received. In this respect, 19th century perceptions of the Lake District through Gilpin's eyes via the artist Claude Lorrain were fundamentally different to the one mediated by the digital camera. As travel becomes cheaper, so travel photography has moved from documenting and displaying places for others to see to becoming a promotional vehicle, either to encourage travel to that place or for the photographer to repeat that image, proof that they've been there. The selfie stick must be the ultimate progression of this, where people now spend more time looking at themselves on a phone screen in the image than they do in the surroundings themselves. Conversely, when we go to a gallery in museums, we don't look at the art, we take a selfie with it. And it could be that the 21st century is leaving us incapable of deep engagement with anything. Recalling Cosgrove's notion of landscape as a way of seeing, this becomes a metaphor for how we're being trained to view our present as always potential documentation in the form of a tweet, photo, status update, etc. The photographer knows well that after taking many pictures, one's eye becomes like a viewfinder, always viewing the world through the logic of the camera mechanism via framing, lighting, depth of field, focus, movement, and so on. Even without the camera in hand, the world becomes transformed into the status of a potential photograph. And with social media, we have become like the photographer, our brains always looking for moments where the ephemeral blur of lived experience might be best translated into its documented form. I'd like now to focus on the subject of the spaces we inhabit and the human interaction within them. This engraving by Camille Flammarion, done at the end of the 19th century, was a famous depiction of the human situation within the vast, complex cosmos, representing the worldview of the 19th century. Representations such as these compel the question, what might this representation be today? How has this conception of space shifted, if at all? There are, of course, multiple spaces and realities, but in this talk, I want to focus on just three. Striated space, smooth space, and cyberspace. According to philosophers Deleuze and Guattari, smooth space is occupied by intensities and events. It is haptic rather than optic, a vectorial space rather than a metrical one. Smooth space is characteristic of sea, of ice, and the desert. Is occupied by packs of nomads. It's a texture of traits consisting of continuous variation of free action. The characteristic experience of smooth space is short-term, up close, with no visual model for points of reference or invariant distances. Instead of the metrical forms of a striated space, smooth space is made up of constantly changing orientation of nomads, entertaining tactile relations among them. Smooth does not mean homogeneous, however, but rather amorphous, non-formal. In fact, striation creates homogeneity. Homogeneity is the limit form of a space, striated everywhere and in all directions. According to Deleuze and Guattari, striation is negatively motivated by anxiety in the face of all that passes, flows or varies, and the constancy and the eternity of an in of itself. Thus, A Thousand Plateaus recounts an extended confrontation between the smooth and the striated, in which the striated progressively took hold. The sea and the desert are examples of smooth space that become striated. Striation seems to be, at least in part, the effects of technological mediation, resulting in mathematical qualities as opposed to its qualities. Striation makes the measurable. Examples of a striation include warp and woof, harmony and melody, longitude and latitude. In simplified terms, the grid. To illustrate the conceptions of these spaces, I'm going to show you a short mini clip from the 1982 indie classic called Koyaanutsqatsi, which translates from the Hopi word meaning life out of balance. Directed by Godfrey Reggio and a racy score by Philip Glass. The film, over an hour and a half, perfectly describes what Deleuze and Guattari refer to as smooth space and striated. The film reveals a fundamental estrangement from nature, but also beautifully illustrates the conflict between nomadic and sedentary space. While Deleuze and Guattari consider smooth and striated to differ fundamentally in nature, they also believe that the two spaces in fact exist only in mixture. Here, Ed Bertansky's photographs present this hybrid space. So, jumping back 13 years, this is one of the first big works I made, having recently arrived in Japan. At this time, I, as many other artists at the time, were trying to reconcile the impact of the internet and how that related to painting, but also our understanding of the discrepancies between landscape and culture. Although largely unbeknown to me at the time, I was subconsciously interested in compositions of industrially transformed environments that were simultaneously precise and dynamic, static and complex, ordered and irrepressible. A lot of the work from this time featured deliberate, disembodied perspectives of uncontrollable spaces, harnessed by aesthetic codes of framing. The topographic and the tectonic images compel a shifting eye and reveal a liminal space, neither natural nor cultural. During this period in Japan, I was involved in cave trips, which of course is smooth space par excellence. We're in an era where to be anonymous is an anomaly. It's important to understand that unrestrained publicity on social media needs to be understood fundamentally with its polar conceptual opposite, creativity and concealment. That doesn't simply mean adjusting your privacy settings. Jean Baudrillard develops the concepts obscenity and seduction around the knowledge-non-knowledge relationship. Obscenity is the drive to reveal all and expose things in full, whereas seduction is the process of strategically withholding in order to create magical and enchanted interest, what he calls the seen as opposed to the obscene. That is, non-knowledge is the seductive and magical aspect of knowledge. Facebook can be seen as a prospect refuge site, a space where one both reveals and conceals. One can view the tempting virtual prospect from a position of private refuge. We always enact a game of reveal and conceal, never showing too much in case we blow it all. What is hidden entices us. Social media is not the death of concealment. What is revealed on Facebook is countered by what is concealed. When we creatively hide things by imaginatively hinting at something, we provide enchantment. This principle can be applied both online, but more importantly, in creative practice. The direct experience of being in between cultures drives my interest in liminal activities in the landscape. Cave exploration, mountain pilgrimage, research into aesthetics and cultural practices of hunting and asceticism draw out alternative approaches to landscape and invite the viewer to advance towards the blind spots and the hidden layers, and invite the viewer to advance of landscape appreciation. The camera obscura, projections, observatories, and painting are all the media I employ for cultivating awareness and transforming perception. The exhibition, The Phantom Hut and the Ornamental Hermit, is set within the framework of East and West aesthetic attitudes towards nature appreciation. The Japanese aesthetics of Datsuzuko, detachment, and Yugen, profound grace and subtlety, are abruptly juxtaposed with Western tenets of the sublime, manifested in the aesthetic pilgrimages of artists and erudite travelers seeking out the picturesque in 19th century England. Two narratives are prevalent themes in the exhibition: the Asian tradition of recluse poets such as Kamano Chome and Matsuo Basho, and itinerant monks, Yamabushi, residing in temporary huts whose actions and expressions were characterized by detached, interiorized accounts of the self and society, ephemeral nature, existence, and ultimately the aspirations towards nothingness. The second narrative is that of Western Romantic tradition of the picturesque ruin, prevalent in the 18th century. The concept of ruin and art in the West were concepts invented in the beginning of the Italian Renaissance. This was one of the many periods in history when the society began to look back at the past. At the same time, they became concerned with progress. This pattern is a crucial cultural construct in the West that's continually represented throughout modern history at the present. For artists, architects, and thinkers, the ruin represents an abstraction of architecture. In its obsolescence, a ruined building remains a potent carrier of meanings. In its incompleteness and deconstructed state, the ruin becomes a fluid frame for personal projections and possible reconstructions. This notion of projection and potentiality is the precarious point of confluence where the meditating hermit and the ruined building can acquire convergence in the inevitable recognition of a transient self. The allegory of ruined architecture, the dissolving self, natural disasters are poignant today as they unavoidably have always been. The exhibition, The Phantom Hut and the Ornamental Hermit, was shown at the Project Space in Kyoto in 2012. The exhibition brought together large-scale murals, oil paintings, architecturally inspired installations, and optics. Viewers, on entering the gallery, were confronted with a white space, half filled with smoke. Those curious enough to actually enter the gallery were then cast into darkness as a sensor inside was activated. The timing of the shutoff was random to increase a sense of disorientation. A mounted optical lighting system sent shards of light around the space, hitting points around the gallery and momentarily offering glimpses at details of paintings on the walls. The shards of light became tangible as they hit the smoke that was being continually blown into the space by a dry ice machine. Viewers were waist high in vapor, rendering concrete notions of architectural and physical boundaries open to doubt. In the middle of the space, a rustic-looking hut clad in rushes arose from the ethereal layer of mist. The Phantom Hut was a walk-in camera obscura unit that projected the exterior images down into the dark interior of the hut. A lens inside could be rotated manually, giving a 360 degrees field of vision. One could sit inside and slowly view the paintings and murals of monks, hermits, and foliage from a subdued and totally dark space. A further twist of the lens veers away from the meditative and towards the actual present landscape on view from the gallery wall of windows. Cars, pedestrians, and a bustling urban landscape offer an alternative point for consideration. The misty, obscure projections from within the Phantom Hut dissolved figure-ground relations, and when figures passed by in front of a painting, they strangely merged with the pictorial. Whilst inside the dome, one's own sense of physicality is also rendered ambiguous. Stark contrast between extreme darkness and interiority and an ethereal and pervasive whiteness puts the viewer in a radically different space. As in many of my installations, the idea is through confusion, disorientation, one forms a new complex understanding of environment. So I'm just going to buzz through some of the works that are on display there. This is approximately 7 foot by 8 foot, done in graphite and alkyd on canvas. This is a detail. And then from inside the dome. This is Kamala Chome. So I projected this image as I painted it, and then I overlaid it several times. And so it has this kind of stereoscopic or misaligned 3D effect. And so as you're looking at it, you sort of start to tremble. And so it's kind of echoing this idea of religious rapture. And they're all done in hand-grown, handmade pigments. If you're very quick, you can see something obscene. Okay, so moving on to another project. In the fall 2012, I embarked on a 3-week expedition, like a few other of our faculty, to the high Arctic as part of the 2012 Arctic Circle residency. The objective of this project were to generate new site-specific documentary projects exploring the phenomenon of light and shadow in the Arctic landscape, one of the few remaining remote regions of the world. With the use of a specially designed portable tent camera obscura and numerous archaic optical devices and recording equipment, I explored strategies to intensify the visualization of the Arctic landscape beyond the familiar conventions perpetuated since the 19th century. The camera obscura and the clawed glass is a way to restrict extraneous visual information and create a more intense visual experience through displacement and expose the mechanics of perception and vision. The projects done during the residency focus on representations that destabilize vision, promoting a slowing down in the experience of space. That's a close-up of the lens. I had to keep it warm. The Arctic, like a desert, defines itself as an environment where there is no line separating earth and sky. There is no immediate distance, no perspective or contour, visibility is limited, and yet there is an extraordinary fine topology that relies not on points or objects, but rather of hyacites, on sets of relations, winds, undulations of the snow, the creaking of ice, the tactile qualities of visual space. The variability and the polyvocality of directions is an essential feature of smooth spaces of the rhizome type, and it alters their cartography. The nomad space is localized and not delimited. During the 3-week residency in the high Arctic, I worked daily on multiple projects, some of which grew into more substantial pieces, others were less defined in outcome, but weave in and out of other projects. My aim was to promote a slowness and intensity to the representation and allow a diversity in my own experience of the landscape and its manifestations in the projects. I produced fragmented surveys that explored new modes of perception and experience and attempted to open up the boundaries of our lived experience of space. The high Arctic is known for its unpredictable weather conditions, which largely dictates movements on a ship. With the added consideration of polar bear alerts, any fixed plans, projects were mostly futile. One had to go with the flow. As a result, most of the projects during the residency were experimental and made in improvised situations. As a whole, these pieces form explorations of the phenomenon of light and shadow in the context of the extreme geographical context and based on the writings and work of Athanasius Kircher's epic, The Great Art of Light and Shadow. Here is a project using the actual glaciers, the icicles, as a lens. As ongoing research, I explore the creative potential of cave exploration. Crawling blindly through claustrophobic underground networks, one experiences the feeling of intense interiority, where the nature morphs into an internal thought process. The Arctic landscape could be construed as an inversion of the cave's spatial experience, openness, spatial infinity, and overabundance of whiteness and light. My creative experiments were an attempt to bring the model of cave exploration to the contrasting environment of the Arctic. The cave-like dome structure that I set up daily allowed me to view and contemplate the surroundings without moving. Sitting quietly within the intimacy of the dark dome, watching the hazy projections down on the snow, presented a representation that was contextual and responsive. This way of recording scenery focused on sensory interaction instead of an idealized and conceptual manifestation. The perception grows in increments. The dome functioned as a transient observatory, producing a discontinuous narrative. Through improvisation and a continually shifting atmosphere, and locations broke down clear narratives and representations, creating an associative field of images where myself, as the producer, became not a passive external viewer, but an active participant. The use of the camera obscura's panning motion creates a corporeal effect, as opposed to the observer who walks around the landscape. The panning motion incorporates the passing around. Something comes into the image, something goes out, thus emphasizing the democratic character of the viewpoint that does not distinguish between landscape features, human, occurrence and condition, narration and description. In this way, attention is created by anticipation of what the scene will reveal or not. Okay, so that was a setup using a kind of modern version of what the Clorid glass would be. And so I set it up in various locations. And so what you're seeing is actually a setup with a camera facing the mirror facing away from the subject. So everything comes into the scene, so it's just a question of waiting. So I'm going to talk now about the next project, which is titled Insubstantial Pageants of the Mind's Eye. This installation view for a solo exhibition at the Butcher's Daughter Gallery in Detroit in 2013, comprised of large sculptural tent camera obscura that housed 5 lenses, allowing 360 degrees viewing from the interior. The exhibition also included large-scale paintings, murals, and mirrors. The title, Insubstantial Pageants, comes from The Tempest, Act 4. In most of Shakespeare's work, he obsesses about dream, fantasy, hallucination, and enchanted simulations. The works still shape our collective fantasies. I wanted to create an exhibition where works could be seen sequentially and mediated through a variety of optical and conceptual filters. The notion of the eidetic vividness of mental images merges with the spectator, and painted images of exposed craniums is an attempt to destabilize the viewing process and uncover the insides of things. The psychologically charged interior space transposed into the paintings and the cantoptric mediations create multiple levels of meanings and associations. The immersive camera obscura teepee that dominate the space is equipped with 5 camera obscura lenses. This creates a linear dialectical tension between what is inscribed on the wall as an artist and what can be experienced by the viewing public from an interiorized position. That's a detail. In the Encephalon series, large-scale paintings explored in paint and pixels the complexities of fractal images. The paintings begin and end with the process of blind intuition, where I throw large expanses of paint, pigments, alkyds and solvents, and sprays that react in unanticipated ways. When thrown together in a haphazard way, a careful observation and study of fluid dynamics and materials as they are manipulated and combined bring the elements of control to the mercurial process, and one can then manipulate the visual patterns and effects to occur on the surface or skin of the canvas. The close scrutiny of small details of these painterly forms at very close range as both artist and viewer reveals analogous parallels in natural processes between the human body and the terrestrial, a similar range of micro and cosmographic potential that the digital images of microscopy and satellite imagery aspire to. However, these images do not move. One cannot pan in and out, and this has to be done manually. The human eyes in the mobile body are the kinetic aspect of the survey and navigation of the intense surfaces of the paintings. Here are a couple more images from the exhibition. That's a detail. So these are all large paintings. I think this one is about 8 feet high. Encephalon, meaning inside the head. So I'm going to say a quote. Man is called by the ancients a world in miniature, and certainly this name is well applied. For just as a man is composed of earth, water, air, and fire, so is the body of the earth. If man has in him bones, which are the support and the armor of the flesh, the world has rocks, which are the support of the earth. If man has in himself the sea of blood, in which the lungs rise and fall in breathing, so the body of the earth has its oceanic sea, which also rises and falls every 6 hours for the world to breathe. If from the said sea of blood spring veins, which go on ramifying throughout the body, similarly, the oceanic sea fills the body of the earth with infinite veins of water. That was Leonardo da Vinci in 1490. Encephalon is an expansive body of work made roughly over the past 2 years. Through shifts in scale, surfaces, and media, Encephalon opens up spaces that explore the narrative and interiority and spatial interchanges between the geology, architecture, landscape, and the body. My research for this project began with navigating and scanning through hours of virtual microscopic images from the U of M's histology department. Histology is the study of the microscopic structures of tissues. These remarkable images offer a profusion of vistas that shift in scale, texture, and forms. The fatty viscera surrounding liver tissue, in extreme magnification, take on universal forms and fractals that can be interpreted depending on one's fields of interest. The types of magnification and textures that orientated my navigation with the virtual microscopic technology were the edges and the in-between areas of tissues where one texture would fuse, amalgamate, congeal with another. These virtual expeditions into unseen worlds reveal for me an impulse for pattern recognition and the ambiguous distinctions between representation and abstraction. The Inner Man series of work was initially inspired by a passage in an esoteric book published towards the end of the 15th century by an unknown author. Hypnerotomachia polyphili, or The Strife of Love in the Dream, was at the same time read by every Renaissance intellectual and is still referenced as the seminal book on architecture, antiquity, landscape studies, literature, and typography to the present day. The presumed author, a friar of dubious reputation, was obsessed in particular by the architecture and landscape. This remarkable book, strange, pedantic, erotic, and allegorical, has been a referent that I continually revisit with a curiosity of how to make sense of it in the present. The architectural theorist Alberto Perez Gomez has retold this unconventional narrative in late 20th century terms. According to Perez Gomez, the concept of the forest for the medieval mind represented the unknown. The unfathomable today has been replaced by the high-tech environment of virtual space, appliances, and non-spaces. In revisiting Hypnerotomachia polyphili, I find parallels with the fusion of mysticism, borderlands, architectural theory, and the cultural material that project the perceptual world of today and the construction of virtual worlds. In the original, the protagonist Polyphili, lover of all things, wanders in and out of forests, architectural ruins, and fantasy dream states. It is here that I recall the spectacle of viewing the semi-present Pokemon goers on the actual virtual adventures, chasing virtual characters in places of cultural interest. This increasingly common sight is a vivid contemporary incarnation of Polyphili's space of emergence, an obsessive scanning and surveillance of his surroundings for a potential immersive encounter. In one particular evocative passage, after clambering across a field of ruins, he comes across a vast and extraordinary colossus. With the aid of his hair, one could climb upon his chest and then reach his lamenting mouth by way of the dense, twisted hairs of his beard. This opening was completely empty, and so, urged by curiosity, I proceed down the stairs that was his throat, thence into his stomach, and so, by intricate passageways, and in some terror, to all the other parts of his internal viscera. Everything was there that is found inside the natural body: nerves, bones, veins, muscles, and flesh, together with every sort of disease, its cause, cure, and remedy. All the closely packed organs had little entrances, giving easy access, and were illuminated by small tunnels distributed in suitable places around the body. Derelict Man is still a work in progress, is a series of large-scale paintings of monumental anthropomorphic heads in the landscape. It takes its framework from the passage of Hypnerotomachia polyphili, which describes his discovery of a transparent colossus among the imagined ruins of antiquity. Scale, intense line work, abstraction, suggestions of apophenia, and anthropomorphism are strategies to enable a speculative interpretation that oscillate between scale and interior-exterior spaces. The image of Derelict Man derives from the now destroyed monument bust of the exiled Filipino dictator Marcos Ferdinand. Here is a digital version of that same image, which was recently in a show in Korea. It was allegedly bombed by rebels opposing the dictatorship, and for a brief period it existed as an evocative contemporary ruin, a monument to greed, the exploded self-importance. In the blast, it lost its eyes, nose, and forehead, revealing an empty shell. In its entropic dissolution, it created a poignant allegory for impermanence. I'm fascinated by the story of residents exploring the interior of the exploded bust in search for treasure. Before his exile, Ferdinand purportedly hid part of the stash of stolen billions from the Philippine economy in secret places around the bust. This narrative parallels again Polyphilly's adventure, as well as contemporary multiple-player virtual game strategies that can be a subconscious manifestation of atavistic tendencies to control the surrounding territory, transform it into landscape, as a place where everything can be known, understood, observed, defended, and possessed. Here are a couple more large-scale paintings from that series. In detail. I'm going to speed up just a little bit. Okay, so this is a project that, if you remember to the last talk, Roland Garaf and I were on a research trip to India, and so we took this camera obscura unit, and I just want to show you a quick. So they were pretty pleased with that. And if we can keep the lights down again, this is what they were seeing. Okay, and this is actually a photograph of the projection directly down on the floor. It looks like a watercolor painting. Sorry, light man. So this is a new experimental film, and I want to start it halfway through. So, I've realized that I'm not getting very good at peeling oranges because it's taking a bit more time than I imagined. But I'm going to end there, and I'm very happy to take some questions next door. So, thank you.